Hello, I am Christine Gannon, the founder and CEO of Brightworks Consulting, and I couldn't be more excited today to be with my colleague Sondra Radcliffe today. Sondra and I are here today to talk about the 50/50 Women on Boards organization, and we're part of the Executive Leadership Committee here in Phoenix, and will be part of the annual event locally here on October 5th. For those of you that haven't heard of 50/50 Women on Boards, it is the leading global education and advocacy organization committed to accelerating gender balance and diversity. And we're on a mission, all of us together, to advance women to corporate boards with the goal of achieving 50% of women serving on boards across the Russell 3000. So Sondra, welcome. So glad to be with you today. A little bit about Sondra. She is a global executive who has had a very successful career as an attorney at AM Law 100 firm, and she is also a Fortune 50 business executive. And as an experienced general manager, Sondra has focused on aerospace and defense, commercial manufacturing, and the broader industrial sector, with demonstrated expertise leading businesses in the United States, Germany, India, and the Philippines. So Sondra, welcome.
Thank you, Christine, and thanks for having me here today. I really enjoy the opportunity to talk to you and to talk more about our work with 50/50 Women on Boards.
So to kick us off, what is the current state with achieving 50% of women holding a seat on boards across the Russell 3000?
Well, as of March of 2023, women hold 28.9% of US company board seats. That's a 1.6% increase over last year. So the numbers are increasing, but we still have a lot of work to do to get to 50%. But it's not just about the number of seats on boards, it's about making those numbers count. 43% of Russell 3000 companies do not have gender balanced boards. And that's why organizations like 50/50 Women on Boards are so important. Their mission is to educate, advocate, collaborate, and report to the industry on the issues and in order to progress and make boards more diverse, because we know that companies that have diverse boards are more profitable, more productive, and have higher levels of engagement among their workforce.
I think we're absolutely making progress, but we still have a ways to go, right?
We do.
That's why, it's been such a good experience being part of 50/50 Women on Boards, even though we're only in Phoenix, and I say only, we're the fifth largest city in the country, but it's given me insight into the rest of the country in terms of their events and how they're advancing this cause too. So I'm really honored to be a part of it with you and honored to be a part of this movement. So part of your career, if we look at some things specifically related to you, part of your career has been spent in aerospace and defense. And how do you think this industry aligns with the goals of 50/50? And do you feel like across the sectors that women have a seat at the table?
I think it's changing. So, most of my career has been focused in largely male-dominated industries, and aerospace and defense is one of those. Now, there are many companies who have made pledges and commitments to Paradigm for Parity and have really focused and doubled down on their efforts to increase gender diversity and diversity across both their executive leadership and their board seats. So I do feel like the conversation is helping. I think that we're making progress. And for a while, 4 out of the 5 defense companies were led by women. Now, the good news is, as those women have left those positions and retired, many of them have joined board seats. Leanne Corrett from Boeing Defense and Space joined the Raytheon board, and Marilyn Houston has joined boards. And so we see a lot of these women moving into board seats. And that's so important because we know that the majority of board seats are filled through the network that you have. And so increasing diversity among boards, increasing the number of women on boards helps us all as we start looking at trying to increase the number of diverse candidates who are sitting on boards. Now, aerospace and defense companies have traditionally kind of gone along with the market numbers and where we're at right now. So they hover, but kind of in the high 20s. I would say typically between 25 and 30%. There are some industries that are making progress that's above that national average. Utilities, for example, are at about 34% in terms of their diverse board seats. And so we know that all of the efforts that we've been putting out, the commitments of these companies to increase their board seats, a lot of their commitments to develop women, I myself was part of a program within Raytheon that's really designed to get more women into P&L roles. And so I think that companies are focusing on this. And I think that that effort will generate a broader pool of candidates as well as the conversation. There are a lot of candidates out there. And so it's really not a pipeline problem. It's a networking problem, since we know many of these roles aren't posted or the search doesn't yield in a traditional fashion. So it's really about, and you have great organizations like Him for Her that are pairing male CEOs with diverse candidates in order to increase the diversity in the network among those candidates with CEOs who sit on boards and are looking for board roles.
There is so much you just shared that I think we could talk about for 2 hours, but a couple of things. One, there's a large discussion that's happening just across industries, helping women understand that the board membership and a board seat is a path, because a lot of women don't even realize that's available to them, and that's where they contribute years of experience. There's a woman that I was speaking with that's very early on in her career recently here in Phoenix, and sharing with her the opportunity to be a part of 50-50 Women on Boards in the event that's coming up. And she said, I sit on a lot of nonprofit boards. That should be a great discussion. And I said, well, this is really about paid boards. She had no idea that this was even an option. And so I think, when I think about early on in my career, not really knowing, wow, that's an option for women to take your years of experience and have the ability to contribute in a new chapter, right?
Absolutely. And we know that it takes a while, right? I think it is a board journey. And I think the data tells us that it's about 2 years from the time that most women start their board journey to when they get their first board seat. And there's a lot that goes into that. One, we already talked about the network, and the network's a huge piece of it. So organizations like 50-50 on Women on Board, who are trying to increase education and as well as advocate for women, for these board seats. But there's also a shift that happens internally during this journey. Many of the women who are candidates for board seats have had great executive careers. They have all of this experience, but you have to flip the switch in how you talk about your experience and how you position that in your board documents to transition from an operating executive into a board role, because the role is very different in leading and managing, and a board role, which is more oversight.
Absolutely. There's also another discussion that's happening to add on to that women who haven't had a P&L role, that have been in potentially an HR position or a different position, but in an executive role in the organization, when we look at boards and we look at the makeup, not only are we seeing the lack of women, but the lack of HR experience. And there are a lot of women and men, but a lot of women who are in human resources in companies and don't realize that this is an option for them as well. And it doesn't always have to be you haven't had P&L, so you don't qualify. So I think, the aperture is expanding as we look at how are the board seats being filled. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's not a pipeline issue. It's really network. It's really about your network. These positions aren't posted, and it is about planning and preparing in that journey that you talked about. Again, when I was speaking with that young lady early on in her career, having her place in her mind, this is a journey. And so what experiences are you taking on as part of your career? And how does that link to, a different chapter later in your career?
Absolutely. And
So
if you know where you're going, for example, if you learn early in your career that this is an option, then you can make some of those decisions along the way to get different experiences that will help make you a better candidate for a board role. Now, the good news is, and I think this goes with the education piece of, that women on 50-50 women on boards is working with, but the conversation has changed. You're absolutely right that it used to be, boards were looking for someone who had P&L experience. They were looking for former or sitting CEOs. Now there's, especially post-COVID, right, when the labor force became such a hot topic, as we think about workplace retention and how that gives some companies a competitive edge. And you think about workplace engagement in a post-COVID environment with remote and hybrid work, I think skills such as those CHRO roles become more important. And I do see an increased focus from boards who are sourcing new candidates to look at those maybe functional skills to give diversity and that insight into their process, and maybe departing a little bit from that traditional, we want CEOs as our board members.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So shifting gears a little bit to share some information during the pandemic, I was honored to co-author some research that spotlight when women are engaged and have a seat at the table, companies outperform. And the research shows that. So companies with women directors on their board perform better than those boards without women. So, there's metrics and research that show factually that this is truth. And Harvard reported that when Fortune 500 companies were ranked by the number of women directors on their boards, those in the highest quartile reported a 42% greater return on sales and a 53% higher return on equity. And that's significant. And while those numbers are out there, when companies start thinking about the makeup of their boards, this is where I think 50-50 women on boards has played such a significant role in terms of their education and educating those who are seeking new board members, as well as women who are seeking a board seat. So from your perspective, what does industry research show to support that the workforce is better engaged when there's women on the board?
Yeah, so workforce engagement, as we were talking about just a minute ago, is really a concern for many companies in the post-COVID environment. They're trying to grapple with how do you have engagement? How do you have effective engagement in a blended environment? You have some employees that are on site, some who may be hybrid, some that are fully remote. And that makes a lot of sense, especially since we know that there can be as much as 147% difference in earnings per share and competitiveness for companies who have an engaged workforce versus those who have lower engagement. And we know, as you said from the data, that women are better at engagement than men. But it's not about women are better or men are better. It's really about engaging the full utilization and strength of your organization. And why wouldn't we want to do that? We know that men and women bring different strengths and value to the table. And companies that recognize that and can utilize the collective strength of their full workforce perform better. So Gallup has told us, they did a survey and they said most of the time female managers are better than their male counterparts at setting expectation for employees, at building relationships with their subordinates, at encouraging a positive team environment, and at providing employees opportunities to develop their career. We know that companies have higher levels of gender diversity, also have higher levels of workforce engagement, as well as corporate sustainability efforts. So the simple truth of the matter is diverse leadership allows boards to address a broader array of stakeholder needs and concerns. And companies that have figured this out, as you said, are getting better financial returns as well.
Absolutely. I really appreciate what you said about men and women, because oftentimes I get the question of why is there so much focus on women? Well, that's an obvious answer that we could probably spend 3 days on, but it really isn't about who is better. It's really about complementing one another. And men and women, when they come to the table, they have unique skills and a unique strength that they bring. And together, it works really well. And so I appreciate what you said, because really it isn't about women are better at X and men are better at Y. It just is really, to your point, utilizing the strengths of both. So I appreciate that. What are some of the ways our listeners, do you think, can get more involved and help in this mission with 50-50 women on boards?
So there are a lot of ways, both at a corporate and an individual level. So, obviously it takes money to put these events on and to do the work that Women on Boards does. So, obviously financial contributions, if you can donate to help, the education, reporting, collaboration, and advocacy work that they're doing, that's always helpful. Time, volunteering, even if you don't have the money, or if you have the money and you also want to volunteer your time, these events take a lot of effort and energy to put on. And so, having people volunteer their time, both in terms of the event planning or as a director. We have many existing directors, and we'll talk about that, I think, in a minute when we talk more about the specific Phoenix event. But we have existing directors volunteering their time to share their journey with women who are just starting out and maybe, looking at this as an option for their future career progression. You can attend one of the workshops as an individual, or as a corporate sponsor. You can buy a table or sponsor some of these events that are happening all across the country.
Fantastic. There are a lot of ways. I love what you said, because there's so many ways. If you don't have time, you can support financially, or if you do have time, you can, there's a number of ways to do that. So what do you feel like when you think about our committee and our team and the Phoenix City chapter, what are the strengths and the things that we're doing to outreach locally that are working?
Well, one of the things that I'm really excited about with respect to the Phoenix event is our speaker. So our keynote speaker this year is Eileen Collins, who was a colonel with the U.S. Air Force and a former astronaut. She was the first woman to pilot the space shuttle and the first to command a space shuttle mission. And we know that Arizona has a large aerospace and defense sector. I think there are 22 companies in Arizona that support aerospace and defense. So we're really excited to get a speaker, the caliber of Eileen Collins to, come to our event to really tap into these industries, because as we mentioned before, there aren't as many women in these industries in executive leadership or in board roles. And certainly there are great examples that we can point to, but we want to increase that. And so we're really excited about having Eileen Collins is our speaker, about tapping into those industries. Arizona has a really broad manufacturing industry outside of aerospace and defense. So we think that this is going to appeal to a really wide range of companies and individuals within the community. And, as you said, there's just such a great opportunity for individuals who are thinking about board service to come to these events to learn more about what this journey looks like, to talk to seasoned directors and get their own experience. And that'll help shape and inform whether they think that this is the right fit for them and where they want to go next on their journey.
Right. So if you're a listener and you are interested in finding out more about 50/50 Women on Boards for your city, if you're not in Phoenix, you can just go to the website 50/50 Women on Boards and search for your city. It's 5050womenonboards.com, and we'll have that link below. And for questions about 50/50 related to the organization, you can reach out to either one of us, or you can reach out on LinkedIn for us, or you can reach out on the 50/50 Women on Board site. And there's a contact section that you can access the team at a national level based on your city. So before we close, Sondra, how did you get involved with this movement, and what's your why behind it?
I think I'm really passionate about sharing my own experiences. And I think that everyone that I've talked to, along my own journey has been the same way. There's no shortage of women or men who, will talk to you and share their journey, share their experiences with you. And I really feel a passion to pay it forward. So I started my board journey a couple of years ago through various organizations, initially with Athena Alliance. Through the connection and the network that I made there, that led me to a Harvard program, Women Execs on Boards. They've got a fantastic alumni organization that I connected with after that program. And through that program, I was introduced to 50/50 Women on Boards. And so there's a real interconnectedness among many of these groups working to support the effort to get more diversity among our corporate boards. And so, it's really just about, supporting the broader organization, sharing your story, and helping others along the way.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. It's really an amazing organization to be a part of. And the
It
work
really is.
that Betsy is spearheading and her passion around this is making such a difference. So it's an honor to be a part of it. So Sondra, thank you so much for your time today to talk about one of my favorite organizations, and I know yours too. And so if you're listening, the Phoenix event is October 5th if you're in Phoenix, and the 50/50 Women on Boards event will be posted on the Phoenix site. So 50/50 Women on Boards /Phoenix. And for other cities, you can find more information about your specific city on that website as well. Sondra, thank you so much. Appreciate you being with us today, and excited for women to hear more about this.
Thanks, Christina. Really appreciate your time today.
Brightworks Consulting hosts this podcast and YouTube channel to spotlight the leadership around the world that is changing lives. Brightworks offers a myriad of consulting services in the public and private sector, to include diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions for any size company. You can find us at www.brightworksconsulting.com. We're honored to have Best Companies AZ as a presenting sponsor for this podcast. Best Companies AZ is your #1 source for regional employer branding. You can find them at www.bestcompaniesaz.com.